Smith and he smelled like mouthwash. No, just kidding. And actually, I'm being serious, like I forgot to check my teeth when I came up here, so I probably have like roast beef and corn up here, so live stream, work your magic. Okay. So I feel like Dwayne in Adventures in Odyssey, oh, and also I forgot to tell you this, I'm not a preacher, okay? So like when we have interns here, they're supposed to like get out from behind the pulpit and use their hands, and then all the pastors are like, oh, great job, they're so good, you know, but I'm standing right back here, guys. I'm hiding, okay? I don't even know where I was going with that. But anyways, yes, I feel like Dwayne in Adventures in Odyssey, when his band got their first concert, and he said, dude, I got my first gig. And that's literally how I feel. I got my first gig. So anyways, when President Malloyd asked me to speak, like I just assumed that it would be like on extreme fitness and like, oh, laughter. Thanks, guys. Anyways, but to kind of start this off, I want to explain a little bit about myself. It'll probably help you to, it'll just answer some questions that you might have by the time I get done here. When I was about, I don't even know if I was 1 year old, but my mom was in the house working and she heard like this terrible thud, actually several terrible thuds. And her little pride and joy had fallen down the stairs in a walker, and I survived. But that might explain some things. I fell down the stairs as a child, you guys, and probably hit my head. But anyways, other than that, whew, okay. I'd like to think that I had a fairly normal childhood. I grew up in a great family. I had 3 older brothers. I had an older sister and a younger sister, and of course a mom and a dad. And my parents were really good parents. My dad was friendly. He was a hard worker. He would help anybody. My dad was he was extremely consistent. You could see him every morning at like 4:30 in the morning. He would have his devotions, and he was the type of guy, he would go to work to get the coffee pot on for the people coming in after him. Not me, no. I'm the one coming in 2 minutes before work. I'm like, give me coffee. But yeah, I didn't hear that from my dad. But my dad is the one that introduced me to coffee and to Rush Limbaugh. Woo! Okay, anyways. You're not supposed to, I'm just kidding. And my mom was and is an extremely disciplined person. She's very organized. She's like the Exhibit A homemaker. If she does something right, she wants everybody to do something right. It better be done to perfection. And my mom was very good. I was probably switched in the hospital. I didn't get that training. Anyways, but growing up, she would always remind me, like, Joanne, make sure you're praying, having your devotions. And it was kind of annoying because it was like whenever I'd pick up a Nancy Drew book, she'd be like, have you had your devotions today? I'm like, Mom, please, can I just sit down? Whatever, okay. But other than that, fairly normal. I went to public school most of my life, and I did not actually have a bad experience with that. I went to 5 Points Elementary School, and then I went to Baker Junior High, and then I went to Fairborn High School, and I don't have horror stories. Sorry, I keep forgetting I'm supposed to look around. That makes it look better. Okay, let me scan the crowd. But anyways, I didn't really have a bad experience. Kids didn't really make fun of me. I mean, maybe they did behind my back, but it wasn't like in your face. I don't exactly call it persecution when kids would be like, why do you dress the way you dress? Or why do you look the way you look? And I would just say, because I'm Amish. And they're like, are you really? I'm like, yeah, my horse and buggy's out in the parking lot. And they'd be like, oh my God. But I wasn't embarrassed for how I was. And I would tell them, no, I'm not actually Amish. But I would just like kind of joke around with them and, went with it. And by the way, if you do go to public school, guys, some of you, this is going to be the only time these kids see a real Christian. So don't be ashamed of it and make it count, okay? So my church that I grew up in was a very good church. I was raised at the Franklin Bible Methodist Church, and Dan Stetler was my pastor until I was probably 8 or 9, and then Mark Sankey was my next pastor, and I had a great experience as a child being in a loving and united family, church family. I was very tenderhearted as a little girl. From my earliest memories, I wanted to be a Christian, and I tried to be a good kid. But my main struggles in life, forevermore, were I'm ADD, okay? Okay, let me correct that. I'm actually not ADD. I'm ADD, EFG, HIJK, LMNOP. It's a little crazy. But I would bring home my report card and be praying the whole bus ride home. I'm like, oh, dear Lord, today would be a good day to come back. Thanks, Lord, before I give my report card to my mom and dad. And I can remember one time in general, I brought home a report card that was less than desired. And my parents gave me a lecture on being slothful. And it was intense. I mean, they did scripture verses, made me do chants. No, not really. They prayed with me. It literally lasted like 42 days and nights. And my mom said during that time, she's like, Joanne, if you would just make straight A's. She knew I always wanted a dog. And my mom's like, no animals in the house. But she goes, Joanne, I promise you, if you make straight A's, I'll buy you a puppy. She knew good and well that wasn't going to happen. And the thing is, all of my siblings were like very smart and they all made really good grades. She never promised that to any of them. So like my siblings, literally, they all were voted like most likely to be successful and lead happy lives. And I was voted most likely to drive a clown car. Anyways, I was basically just a hyperactive nutcase. And I have no idea where I'm going with any of this. Oh, Lord, help me. But my desire to serve Jesus never wavered. And I was very conscientious also as a kiddo, and probably that started around the age of 12 or 13, and I would like pray all the time. And I would pray like in stores or in church or in restaurants. You would just see me with my eyes closed and my lips moving. I'd pray in cars, especially if my mom was driving. Okay, here's a random story, guys. I gotta throw this in there. Sorry, Mom. You might want to put your prayer shawl on and weep. We went to Arby's, and they had, like, we went through the drive-thru. We ordered our food, and then we went to the one, well, most Arby's, I think, only have one window. But they had a concrete barrier next to this line, so once you were in line, you were not getting out of line. So we order our food and pull up to the window, and my mom pays for the food and leaves. And I was like, Doris, that's not my mom's name, but I just would call her things. I'm like, you didn't get your food. So by this time, I'm like, oh my word. And she's like, oh. So then she put the car in reverse and backed up to the window. Okay, mind you, we've already drove past once. So she backed up to the window, got the food, and the people were already looking like, okay, whatever. And then she forgot she had it in reverse, and so she backed up past the window. Well, thankfully no one was behind us, but by this time, we had already been past the window how many times, but she had to drive past it again to get out of the line. And as we go by, I'm just like, oh, my gentle Joseph mother. So these are why I would pray in cars when she was driving. Anyways, where was I? But my extreme conscientiousness was extremely frustrating because the devil would play games with me. And I can remember, this sounds really crazy, and my mom's probably over there like, I don't even know what she's doing, but I would get to the point where I would pray, and I would feel like for God to hear my prayers, I would have to say like amen 2 times at the end of my prayer or something. It was just like weird, and the devil would just play tricks on me because I wanted to serve the Lord so much that I wanted to do everything perfectly. Like I just have to follow all these, I just have to be perfect. And it was a very big battle in my life, and I would just be like, oh Lord, please help me. I don't want to be weird. Ooh, well. Thanks, Lord. I eventually grew out of it, but just by knowing what God's word said, and obviously with some wise counsel from people who probably knew what I was facing or had gone through it themselves. And as a teenager, I never went through a stage of being embarrassed. Like sometimes kids, you can be kind of embarrassed for how you were raised. Like, oh yeah, my parents make me live this way, actually. And I didn't really ever feel that way. I was proud of how I was raised because I believed in what I was living. It wasn't because my parents were making me do anything, but I would explain why I lived the way I lived and, acted the way I acted. For example, one time in driver's training, I got into the car, and one of the first things the man said to me, he's like, hey, where do you go to church? So I told him, he's like, oh, that's cool, that's nice. Well, you had to be in the car back, I don't know if they still do this, but I had to be in a car with this random stranger, which sounds like a great idea, for like 2 hours as they would drive you around and do all this stuff. And during the course of this drive, he started talking to me about church and maybe about stuff that I believed. And then he was like, so why do you do what you do? What does your church do? So I explained to him, I think that a woman should look modest. I believe, all of these things, and gave him, and he's like, well, that's really great, but I don't think that's necessary, actually. I just think that sounds kind of weird or whatever, but cool if it works for you. But yeah, I definitely don't think it's necessary. And so I looked at him, I was like, just curious. I got into the car. I didn't know you, you didn't know me, but you asked me where I went to church. How did you know I went to church? And he's like, oh, you got me. I was like, yeah, I know. Anyways, that was quite the testimony. Anyways, I don't know where I am, and I'm probably jumping all over the place, but so my last 2 years in high school, my mom decided to homeschool me. She was a drill sergeant. I did 2 years and 6 months. I'm not even kidding you, and it's not because I'm smart. My mom, she would be like, literally just was like, I'm sorry, I'm so scared. Okay, calm down, Joanne. But anyways, my mom, one day she's like, let's just get this done. Won't you feel so much better if you get this done? She made me do like 9 exams in 9 exams in 1 day. And so anyways, yeah, she was a drill sergeant. I'd like to refer to those 2 years as my military service. So, my mom was strict. My brother Rodney, I almost said may he rest in peace. He is still living, but he's probably listening. But my brother Rodney, he tells crazy stories about growing up, like stuff he did. He like joined the mafia when he was 11 and was like robbing midgets, and I'm over here like, I don't know what family he grew up in, but it was not the same house. My mom was strict. She knew. I literally got in trouble one time for leaving hairspray out on the front porch of my neighbor's house, and I'm like, Rodney, what? Anyways, I was not a rebellious kid, and the worst thing I've ever done in my life was like push the red emergency button on the escalators at IHC in Dayton. Thankfully, that's where my criminal record stopped. I then graduated, thanks to my mom, and went to Bible college for 2 years. Now, keep in mind that I had always felt like I was going to be a missionary or a pastor's wife. How does one go about becoming a pastor's wife? Wear perfume and keep walking past the ministerial department? That's exactly what I did. I'm just kidding, I did not. So, when I met Solomon, it was magical. Fireworks went off, harps were playing, cows were mooing. Actually, none of that happened. He was dating someone else. But he came to his senses and he realized he needed to get to know me better. Actually, his girlfriend broke up with him. So when we started dating, we just knew we were for each other. I'm like, I kind of like you. So we dated 3 months and then got engaged. 2 out of 5 stars, I do not recommend, okay? It worked for us, but it was crazy. So we got married on August 10th, 2007, and a year later we went and pastored our first church in Alexandria, PA, and it was called the Alexandria God's Missionary Church, and the people there were absolutely precious. And on one of our first Sundays there, Solomon had preached a message, and I was so proud of him. I'm like, I married a preacher, let me tell ya. So I wanted to congratulate him on such a good message, and I rushed out after church, and I hugged him really tight, but I also picked him up and spun him around. He was not impressed at all. In fact, he was saying through clench, he's like, put me down right now. And he told me, like, you cannot do that stuff, Joanne, okay? But see, Solomon and I have really different personalities. So he's super serious a lot of the time. He's annoyingly disciplined. And he absolutely thrives on a schedule, okay? I, however, am a free spirit. For example, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, honey, we should go skydiving today. And he'll like, how about you stay home and do the laundry? Rude. So another example is like, I crack myself up. Like I sometimes think things are good ideas and I don't quite think them through. That happens 99% of my life. Solomon was in our living room sitting in his leather recliner, and I thought to myself, I was like, it'd be kind of funny. He had his feet propped up, you know, the little handle on the side. I was like, I should go over there and tip him backwards. Just like all the way, like lift up the feet, because again, so I did. I tipped the whole thing over and he fell backwards, and then he was kind of like wedged in there and stuck. And I thought it was hilarious, but he did not. So, but we are so good for each other. He needs to lighten up, and I need to be mature and adult-like. We had our first baby in 2009. Best day ever becoming a mom, and an absolute dream come true. And then 2 months later, on July 11th, 2009, my world changed forever when we got a frantic call from my sister-in-law who had just told my mom that my brother had drowned, or they had, pulled him out of the water, and that they were trying to, bring him back, and he drowned. And so that was a horrible experience for me. It was the first time that I had ever had someone really close to me die. And a few months after that, it was probably one of the first times I had a panic attack, which I didn't realize what a panic attack was. Fast forward, and by the way, that whole year, it was just a rough year. You just life is good. Everything's nice, but my brother's dead. So that was a really tough year for me. And then fast forward to me having 3 babies and 1 on the way. And it was in the month of December, I started experiencing really bad headaches and just debilitating headaches. And I would go to the doctor and they were like, "You're just having a pregnancy migraine." I'm like, "Okay, never had a migraine before, but whatever." And I went back, I forget how many doctors I went to, maybe 5 or 6. And finally it came to the point where one night Solomon thought I was having a stroke. So he took me to the hospital and they wanted to life flight me. And long story short, they thought I had MS, and they told me, "You probably have MS. And so that was extremely traumatizing to me, because here I am, a young mom, I have kids, Solomon loves being a pastor, and I'm like, I just ruined his life. So when people would come into the room, I'd be like, "Please pray for Solomon." And he'd be like, "Will you please quit telling people that? They're gonna think I'm awful." I'm like, "But I feel so bad." Anyways, thankfully it wasn't MS, it was something called ADHD, and it's basically, long story short, if you think about the nerves in your brain, they have a coating on it, my immune system attacked that, and I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't feed myself, and I could talk, but I couldn't talk. So I would sound like I was a stroke patient. And one time in the hospital, I kept talking and talking, and one of my biggest fears was that I was dying. I'm like, "Am I dying?" And I also didn't want to be by myself. So my mom would spend the night with me in the hospital, because Solomon would go back home with the kiddos. And one night I kept talking and talking, and my mom's like, "Okay, Joanne, it's time to go to bed now. Time to go to sleep, sweetie." And then I kept talking, and she's like, "Oh, dear Jesus, just help her to shut up." And I was like, way to comfort me. But anyways, there was some positive things in that whole experience. I learned a lot. In rehab, it was awful. I mean, it was like being in a nursing home. I'm not even kidding you. They made me do fake laundry in rehab. I'm like, okay. And then also, they would ask me to do math problems do this math problem. I'm like, "Honey, I can't even do math when I'm in my normal brain, okay?" And they're like, "Count down from 73 to 20. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be in here a while. Anyways, one night I actually said in rehab, I was feeling sorry for myself, and I was like, "Is this how my life is gonna be?" And I had a roommate. She was this really old roommate, and I was talking to Solomon, and I was crying. I'm like, "Solomon, if I have to live like this the rest of my life, I just want to die." And from the other side of the room, the old lady said, "Me too." And then I started laughing hysterically, and it just, anyways, I gotta hurry. I'm so sorry. I probably have already spoke 93 minutes. Okay. Thankfully, I delivered a beautiful baby girl, Liberty Noel, after that whole incident with Aiden. But I definitely think I had something, not to make light of people who have PTSD, but I pretty much think I have it, because I was always worried, "Oh no, this is gonna happen again." And then on January 10th, I believe it was, in 2018, my dad died of a massive heart attack. And anyway, so that was obviously quite shocking, and that rocked our world, and it changes the family dynamic when you have a parent that dies. And then in 2020, obviously the world went crazy, okay? Solomon and I both had COVID 2 times, and COVID triggered something in my neurological system, and I started having really bad anxiety and feeling like I was going to die. And for 2 years, it has been going on, or had been going on. Some days are better than others. But normal situations were almost impossible for me. I would cry and tell Solomon that I was feeling like I was gonna die, and he'd be super supportive of me and "It's gonna be okay, Joanne. Now go run the sweeper." No, actually, he was pretty good. And then fast forward to last April, my mother-in-law died unexpectedly in her sleep, and so obviously we were shocked, and our world was rocked again. So my point in telling you some of these incidents and moments in my life is that God is good, and he does not fail. And life can be extremely fun and exciting, but life can have its moments of pain and extreme sadness too. With a personality like mine, people always assume that, "Oh, you just must be happy all the time," or "Life must just be so wonderful for you all the time." I am chatty, I am happy most of the time, but I'm not always. My life isn't perfect, and I'm not always chatty, but most of the time I am. Actually, people would tell me growing up all the time, like, oh my word, you talk so much. So in my mind, I'm like, that's it. I am so tired of people saying you talk so much. So I was like determined, I'm not talking anymore. I'm just gonna be quiet, meek Joanne. I promise you this is the truth. I was in school, and by second period, I was physically ill. I was like, I'm gonna die if I don't talk. So it's actually, I have to, it's a physical thing, I have to talk. So, anyways, and with my personality, I'm completely different from my family, okay? So, let me tell you a little bit about my family real quick. I have my older two brothers. My brother Rodney has his doctorate, and my brother Robert, wave your hand, Rob. Okay, he won't do it. He's working on his doctorate right now, and he's like an expertise in mental health. That comes in handy, trust me. My sister Suzanne has her bachelor's in nursing, and my sister Amy, she is currently working on her master's in nursing, and so people will be like, so Sister Loper, what does your daughter Joanne do? I drive a school bus. And I started out in a short one. Anyways, it's getting bigger though. So actually, they're all gonna get to sign their name like Dr. Loper or all this stuff. I'm like, I'm Joanne Shaeffer, CDL. Anyways, people have probably thought I have been mental, I am, but I'm always going to be. Because I kid you not, I was at a doctor's appointment recently, and I was looking at their health magazines. They never have anything good in those it was like literally about how to lower your cholesterol or something. I'm like, I have nothing else to do, okay? So I opened it up, and it was like, how to help your mental health. And it talked about bird watching. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be mental if that's what it takes for me. No, I'm not gonna be doing no bird watching, okay? But my personality is, be who you are. Let God bring out your personality for his good. And I have stumbled many times as a Christian, but my motto is keep going, don't stop, pick yourself up. You just keep trying. If you mess up, pick yourself up, keep going, and the Lord will be faithful to you. So through everything in my life, me being tenderhearted, being extremely conscientious, me being a clown in school, or marrying a preacher, having babies, deaths, all of these things, God has been good. And one of my favorite songs, I don't know the title of it, but it talks about all my life, God has been faithful. All my life, he has been so, so good. And young people, I want you to cling to the hope of Jesus. He can save you and he can keep you. And one of my favorite scriptures is Jude 1:24. Now unto him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. And God's word is true. He can keep you from falling, and he can present you faultless before his throne. So in closing, I just want to share a little personal story pertaining to Christina Malloyd, because she wanted me to talk about her. Just kidding. One time, Christina, Marie Plank, and I were up front singing, and Christina, I guess her heart started racing or something. She thought she was going to pass out. And so she literally left us on the platform in the middle of a song, and I'm like, yodelee-hoo. So she left, and I'm like, what just happened? Someone asked me later, like, why did she leave? I was like, oh, she was just mad that she didn't get a solo. But actually, she really genuinely felt sick, so she had to leave. But forever, I made fun of her for that. I'm like, yeah, leave the platform, make us look stupid. So I would just, like, give her a hard time about it all the time. Until this last August, Solomon and I were the song evangelists at Penview. Anybody at Penview know what happened? I thought I was passing out on the platform, and Solomon gave like this beautiful introduction. He's like, and whatever, gave this introduction, and then I was like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to leave the platform. I think I'm gonna pass out. And I literally left the platform. So apparently, if I make fun of Christina about something, it happens to me. So I would like to take this moment to make fun of how skinny she is. Guys, let me tell you something. I'm gonna be a new woman at IHC. Live for Jesus, guys. God bless.
I'm trying to see what it says you're supposed to say after something like that.